Okay, our next talk, the last talk in this session, is by Dongwoo Park and Hae-Kyung Wee, presenting an analysis of Indonesian WH questions and pseudoclefts.
Okay, thank you, Micho. Let's get started. First, let's go through basic properties of Bahasa Indonesian first. The basic word order is SVO, and it has been widely reported that there are three types of sentence structures in this language. The first type is transitive structure, illustrated in 1a. The verb co-occurs with the prefix mang, which represent the transitivity. And then, as you can see in 1b and 1c, this language has two types of passive forms. So look at the passive one. The theme or the patient is in the subject position, grammatical subject position, namely spec TP, and the agent remains inside a little VP. Here, the verb does not occur with the prefix mang. And then the passive two, exemplified in 1c, is similar to passive construction in English. The verb is accompanied by the passive morpheme D, and the agent occurs with the preposition. Okay, so let's consider WH movement in Indonesian. So in 2A, it exemplifies the declarative transitive sentence, Siti membeli buku itu, which means the city bought that book. And 2B is the subject WH question corresponding to the sentence 2A. So here, the subject WH element siapa is followed by the morpheme yang. So in this case, prefix man can co-occur with the verb. However, as illustrated in 2C, when the object is located in the sentence initial position before yang, namely the scope position of WH element, the sentence is ungrammatical. So when the prefix mang is omitted, as shown in 2D, the sentence turns out to be grammatical. So this indicates that the distribution of mang is not only affected by transitivity, but also by whether WH movement has applied over it or not. Okay, so consider the sentence 2D in detail. So there have been two analyses of the derivation of this sentence. So 2D again, apa yang Siti beli. The first analysis is VP fronting in Travis 2008, inspired by polls. And in this analysis, the sentence 3A, which is identical to 2D, apa yang Siti beli. In this sentence 3A has a derivation in 3B. So that is 3A is the inverse copula construction. So as shown in 3B, yang is a relative complementizer here. And yang Siti beli is the subject of the copula construction. And apa here is inside a VP headed by null copula. Then the VP containing null copula and apa undergoes the movement to the sentence initial position. As a result, WH element can be followed by yang here. The second approach is overt WH movement approach suggested by Eldridge 2008. So as illustrated in 4, the WH element apa is stationary as the object inside a VP, and it moves to the spec CP through phase edge. So in this approach, yang here, yang is an interrogative complementizer. So in this paper, we'd like to propose that DP at WH movement does exist in Bahasa Indonesian. And the second proposal is that the morpheme yang in interrogative sentences and the interrogative null head selecting little VP headed by copula are bundled single CT head. Okay, so more specific properties of WH questions in Bahasa Indonesian is illustrated in 5 and 6. So the sentences in 5 show that WH elements can be located in their scope positions. when subject DP is extracted, yang is optional as illustrated in 5a. However, yang is obligatory when the object DP is extracted. So, apa yang alibili is grammatical. However, apa alibili is ungrammatical. On the other hand, when non-DP WH elements are extracted, yang cannot be present. So, in 5C, mengapa yang John married tadi is ungrammatical, but when the yang is omitted, the sentence turns to be grammatical. This is also true in D and E. Di mana yang Ali membeli buku itu is ungrammatical. However, di mana Ali membeli buku itu is great. And bagaimana Ali membeli buku itu is grammatical. However, bagaimana yang Ali membeli buku itu is ungrammatical. An interesting property in this language is that WH elements can stay in their in situ positions. So more specifically, non-scope positions. So in 6A and 6B, DP WH elements are not in the scope position. In this case, yang is not necessary. From 6C to 6E, non-DP WH elements are in their in situ positions. So even in this case, yang is not present in the sentences. And a question that arises here is why yang is obligatory in object WH movement while optional in subject WH movement, as shown in 5 again. My answer is this. So the difference between 5A and 5A prime is not just the presence or absence of yang. I assume that they have different structures. So in 5A, siapa here is moved to the scope position, and thus yang is present, as is object WH movement. However, in the latter, 5A prime, the siapa does not move to its scope position, given the fact that WH in situ sentences do not occur with yang. So given this, we can make the following interim conclusions. The first one is when DP WH elements such as siapa, apa are located in their scope position, yang must occur. However, when non-DP WH elements including di mana, kenapa, bagaimana are in their scope positions, the complementizers must be null. Okay, so let's move on to the copular construction in Bahasa Indonesian. So Bahasa Indonesian allows copular inversion construction. So 7 exemplifies regular copular inversion. The copula adalah is in these sentences, and in 7a, the grammatical subject John, the grammatical subject is John, while the grammatical subject in 7b is murid itu or pelajar itu. And the predicate of 7a is seorang murid here. In 8, 8 illustrates a Pseudoclefts inversion. So in 8a, the subject and the predicate are separated by the copula here. And yang in 8a is, is a relative complementizer. So in this sentence, the subject buku itu is in the grammatical subject position. On the other hand, in 8b, the predicate CP or predicate DP is in the grammatical subject position. Okay, so in order to discuss the structure of copular constructions, we will adopt Michelson's proposal on the copular construction structure illustrated in 9. So here, DP predicate is the complement of the head pred, and the referential DP is generated in the spec pred P, and the copula is the unaccusative letter V ahead, and this takes pred P as its complement. When T does not bear uninterpretable top feature, neither DP bears interpretable top, the referential DP undergoes movement to spec DP, and thus predicational clauses such as 7a and 8a are generated. However, when T bears uninterpretable top feature and D, like a DP pred bears interpretable top, then the predicate DP undergoes the movement to spec TP over the referential DP. Thus, in this case, specificational clauses like 7b and 8b are created. An interesting aspect is that copula inversion with WH element is not allowed in this language. So as illustrated in 10a, when the WH element is preceded by the copula AFLA, the sentence is grammatical. However, when the WH element is followed by the AFLA, the sentence is ungrammatical as shown in 10b. Then the first question we'd like to answer is why the contrast between 10a and 10b is observed, even though copula inversion is possible. So we assume that the sentences in 10a and 10b are copula clauses. So in 10a, the subject is siapa, while the predicate is sipi, yang dianggap dua. So yang in the copula construction is the relative complementizer inside the predicate CP. And the sentences in 10a are all interrogative sentences, and the interrogative complementizer yang, which is different from the relative complementizer yang in copula construction, is not present in the clausal spine. And then at this point, recall that when yang is not present in the clausal spine in interrogative sentences, only non-DP WH elements, including di mana, kenapa, bagaimana, can be in their scope position. Okay, so based on this, we propose here that the null head interrogative sentences selecting VP headed by copula is a bundled single city head. This head thus contains the features of the null interrogative C and T at the same time. Okay, so let's see the feature requirements of null interrogative C and T separately first. So recall that when the null interrogative C is introduced into the derivation, the moved element must be non-DP element. So based on this, we propose that the null interrogative C contain uninterpretable D feature and optional uninterpretable WH feature and plus Q feature. And if uninterpretable WH feature is present, the overt WH movement must occur. And due to the uninterpretable non-D feature, overtly moved WH element must be non-DP elements. On the other hand, when uninterpretable WH feature is absent in the structure, then WH in situ sentences are generated and WH elements are interpreted via unselective binding. And T in this language also has EPP requirement that the specifier position of it must be occupied by some element. Okay, this can account for the asymmetry in 11 and 12. So in 11, which describes non-DPWH element movement, yang must be absent. So since the head X containing uninterpretable non-DP feature and uninterpretable WH feature with the EPP requirement and plus Q, non-DP element must be located in its specifier position. Okay, this is the reason why the sentences in 20A is ungrammatical. So the specifier position of the head in this structure containing the same features is occupied by the DP WH element. Then the requirement of X, which needs non-DP WH elements as its specifier, cannot be satisfied. So given this, we'd like to answer to the question 1. Why is the contrast between 10A and 10B observed, even though copula inversion is possible? So if the null interrogative C selecting little VP headed by the copula is a bundled city head, then there could be two types of null interrogative bundled city heads. The first one is here. The first one bears EPP, uninterpretable D feature, and uninterpretable WH feature, and plus Q feature, while the second contains EPP and uninterpretable D and plus Q. Okay, so so when CT contains EPP, uninterpretable D feature, uninterpretable WH feature, and plus Q, and the subject CFA moves to the spec CTP, as illustrated in 13, the derivation crashes. The reason is as follows. So CT and the subject CFA establish an agree relation, and the subject moves to spec TP. Then the EPP requirements is satisfied, and uninterpretable WH feature is deleted at once. However, the uninterpretable D feature is not deleted since the moved WH element is DP. Of course, the uninterpretable non-D feature might be deleted through an agree relation with a non-subject element. However, this induces split agree, which is untenable in the minimalist program. So the derivation crashes here. Thus, the sentence 10b cannot be generated here. Okay, so let's consider the next possibility. So the next possibility is about the case where the bundled CT had contained only EPP and uninterpretable D feature, and the subject CFA moves to the specified position of CTP. This derivation also crashes. Since the moved WH subject in spec CTP is a DP, and thus the uninterpretable non-D feature cannot be deleted through the operation agree with the subject. Thus, the sentence 10b cannot be generated. Okay, so now let's think of the next possibility illustrated in 13c. So it is when CT contains EPP, uninterpretable top feature, and uninterpretable non-D feature, and uninterpretable WH feature, and plus Q, and the predicate CP yang dianggap dua moves to the spec of CTP. So in this structure, CT agrees with the predicate yang dianggap dua, and it moves to spec CTP. In this case, uninterpretable non-D feature is deleted since the moved element is a CP. However, the uninterpretable WH feature cannot be deleted. Thus, this sentence crashes. Thus, the ungrammatical sentence 10a, cannot be generated through this derivation. Then how can the sentence in 10b be created? So we propose that the sentence is generated when CT contains EPP, uninterpretable top feature, uninterpretable non-D feature, and plus Q, and the predicate yang dianggap dua moves to spec CTP. So the derivation is represented in 13d here. So CT establish an agree relation with the predicate yang dianggap dua, and all the feature requirement of CT are satisfied at once. Then a question we have to answer is why we have to reject the possibility that CP and TP are separate layers for this construction. Suppose that C and T are separate heads in copula construction. Then the structure would be like 14. Then C contains only uninterpretable non-D feature and plus Q without uninterpretable WH feature, and T bears EPP here. Then the derivation survives. So in this derivation, uninterpretable non-D feature can be deleted through agree with TP or some other non-DP element. And then the EPP requirement is satisfied even when DPWH subject CFA here moves to spec TP. Then it is erroneously predicted that the sentence in 10b would be grammatical, contrary to fact. Thus, we can conclude that postulating a bundled city head induces intended result. Okay, and let's move on to the movement of WH element. So in this section, we'd like to argue that DP-WH movement does exist in this language. So let's consider the sentence in 15. So 15a is the copula construction, and the copula adalah can be omitted. So 15a, yang dianggap dua adalah siapa is grammatical, and 15b, yang dianggap dua siapa is also grammatical. Okay, so according to Travis 2008, 16a, identical to 15b, is generated through VP fronting as illustrated in 16b. So here again, yang dianggap dua is the subject of the sentence, and the moved one is the concealed, concealed predicate. The reason why I call this concealed predicate is the seemingly WH element movement is, in fact, the predicate fronting. So if VP fronting approach is on the right track, it is predicted 17a. 17a would be grammatical. 17a, adalah siapa yang dianggap dua. In fact, this sentence is ungrammatical. So this is because 17a has a structure identical to 16b, except the phonological realization of the copula. However, this prediction is not borne out. Thus, we can say that the omission of adalah cannot be the result of phonological deletion. Of course, one might argue that the VP fronting approach is still available if we assume that there is a particular morphological or phonological reason that makes the copula adalah cannot be pronounced at the sentence initial position in WH question sentences. He or she might say that this kind of phonological reason makes 18a ungrammatical, while 18b grammatical. This is a plausible analysis, but I have no idea why this is so. So because of this, I would like to present an analysis for the asymmetry in 18. This one is related to the question 2. How can 18b be generated? So we propose that 18b is not derived from copula construction. 18b again. Siapa yang dianggap dua? This sentence is not derived from the copula construction. That is, yang is not the element located inside the predicate CP. Instead, yang is a head in the interrogative clause or spine, whose specified position is a scope position of a WH element. And recall that when yang, when DP, WH element is located in the scope position of WH elements, yang must be present in the sentence, as illustrated in 9a and 19a. On the other hand, if non-DP-WH elements are in the scope position and followed by yang, the sentences are ungrammatical as shown in 19b. So in order to capture this, we propose that the head X, whose specified position is the WH scope position, contains uninterpretable D. And as a result, when X contains uninterpretable D and uninterpretable WH feature, the moved WH element located in spec XP must be a DP WH element. So based on this, consider the structure in 20. So C here contains uninterpretable D and uninterpretable WH feature. The moved WH element is a DPWH element. However, this cannot be an appropriate derivation for the grammatical sentence in 18b. This is because movement from spec DP to spec CP is too short, which is referred to as anti-locality. So in order to account for how the sentence 18b is generated, we propose that the structure in 21, the CT head contains EPP, uninterpretable D, and uninterpretable WH feature, which forces the WH element located in the WH scope position to be D-piece, only D-piece. If this is on the right track, it is predicted there should be no complementizer trace effect, namely dead trace effect. And then this prediction is borne out as illustrated in 22. Siapa yang berharap yang akan membelikan baju untuknya. So I assume here that the model akan in the embedded clause is located in OXP or model P located below TP. So if yang were the C head and TP existed as a separate layer, then it would be impossible to account for the grammaticality of the sentence in 22. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have about 5 minutes for questions. Please indicate if you have a question in the chat or by raising your hand. Henderson, if you can unmute yourself.
Hi. So I was kind of wondering, maybe I missed this, but I'm sort of intrigued by the behavior of the I guess the non-DP WH questions. Is it so? You assume that when they appear in their scope position, they've gotten there by movement. But is it? I guess I may have missed this, but is it possible that is it possible for non-WH ones to appear in that clause initial position as well?
Yes, of course. So WH element, non-DP WH element can also be located in the sentence initial position, and namely scope position. But in this case, the complementizer yang must be absent in the sentence, unlike a DP element. So when you see in wait a sec. All right. Okay, 5. Okay, so when you go to the 5b, apa yang alibali is grammatical. However, apa alibali is ungrammatical. However, this show a sharp contrast with non-DP WH elements. So in 5c, mengapa yang John married tadi is ungrammatical. However, when the yang is omitted here, the sentence turns grammatical.
I'm wondering what happens with non-WH. So let's say like in D, if you had instead of where, if you had something like a place name, could you have it? Could you have it?
In this language, as far as I know, in this language, like D man, where the DP where does not exist, and dimana in D like 5D, dimana functions as at where. So non-DP WH elements, so here. And then this is, in this case, also, yang must be absent in this sentence when dimana at where is present, is located in the sentence initial position.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hiroki has a couple questions. Would you like to unmute yourself or?
Sure, yeah. So my question is, so in addition to siapa yang blah, 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 you could also say siapakah yang blah, 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 right? So people usually analyze ka as C, but you have yang as C. So how would you deal with this case?
So siapakah yang? You mean siapakah
Yeah.
yang? Okay. So I'm not sure whether so it has been widely reported that ka is some kind of element, some like a affix that can be adjoined to some element inside the predicate or something like that. So that was the main argument. Siapakah yang membeli buku itu is derived from derived from VP fronting instead of WH movement approach. But I couldn't find any argument for the fact that ka in this language really functions as a fix only attached to the like a predicate element. So I have no idea at this point how siapakah yang membeli buku itu is generated. But if my analysis, our analysis on the right track, we don't know how ka is attached to siapa, the subject to WH element, but we have to assume that that sentence also should be derived through a WH movement.